Hello, and welcome to Chat DPS with me, Nick Lovell, and Robert Feldman. This week, Chat DPS is covering a breach of PayPal. We talk about a new class action legal challenge for LinkedIn. Our old Chinese friends, Salt Typhoon, are back. And lastly, well, actually not lastly, but FortiGate defend against their config files being exposed by a new threat actor called the Belson group. And lastly, we just wanted to cover off this thing that's been going on and is active in the news with DeepSeek. So as it's going to be a quick and punchy sort of exercise, Robert, let's just get straight into it. Busy week. PayPal have been fined in a New York court for exposing social security numbers in late 2022. This makes the rest of the court system look positively sluggish, doesn't it?
Yeah, that's right. So a couple of years. Well, so this seems like, I guess, on par in terms of going through the legal system. So, well, maybe the US legal system. So a couple of years to get to a decision point. So I guess Australia take notice of, other systems around the world, particularly when we think about, Medibank, passing their 2-year anniversary. So hopefully we'll see something out of them soon. But yeah, good to see a sort of relatively quick decision with this PayPal issue.
Yeah, I mean, the thing with this is that when I looked into the detail of it a little bit more closely, it's obviously a lesson in understanding field level encryption and how you classify your data, right? Because that's really where the magic is in that particular one.
Yeah, sorry, I was going to say, and the reason behind this exposure of this data, it's just embarrassing, really. Where I mean, it's stated that they had qualified people looking after their security, and then there was just really just fundamental lack of security controls. So no multi-factor. Like just no basic controls. I think they mentioned captures as well, and others. So just really embarrassing levels of security from PayPal, who are handling huge amounts of data, transactions. It's quite incredible, really.
Just a small amount of money, yeah. So moving on to LinkedIn, there's a class action that's been taken against LinkedIn. Millions apparently of LinkedIn premium users sue the business-focused social media platform. And the allegations are that LinkedIn have disclosed millions of personal messages to train generative AI or artificial intelligence models. It suggested that LinkedIn discreetly updated their privacy policy on the 18th of September 2024. What is going on here? Because, I mean, I think we picked up on this a couple of weeks ago, did we not?
Yeah, I can't remember if we talked about it here or we may have pinged each other, but I remember actually seeing on LinkedIn itself some articles coming up saying, hey, look what LinkedIn's done, and here's what you have to do in terms of going into your settings to turn this off. So yeah, LinkedIn switched on this ability to train whatever LLM it's using on everyone's LinkedIn data by default, and you had to actually go in and switch it off. And I think it's another in the long line of organizations being opaque around these changes to their policies and then getting caught out. And in this case, it's led to a class action. And I mean, I know it's not quite the same, but you can draw a bow to that issue with Bunnings that we talked about a few weeks ago, and the way they went about capturing data. And one of the findings was around the lack of transparency in terms of what they were doing in terms of capturing that data. So it may be a little bit of a long bow, but it's, I think the point being is that LinkedIn are just the latest in a long line of these organizations who make these changes, harvest data without being transparent, really upfront and transparent about getting consent from their users, and then there's consequences to that.
Yeah, it's that whole, closing the barn door after the horse has bolted kind of thing, where somebody's obviously made a very, very poor or shaky decision, and somebody that knows what they're talking about has come in later and said, "You can't do that."
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Yeah, that's great, crazy world, right? And I think we'll keep moving. Salt Typhoon back in the news. It's been reported that by the Register that 91% of Salt Typhoon's favorite floors remain and are still open on Exchange servers. What the? What the? We were talking about. We were talking about. Sort of doing your patching and everything just last time around, and here we
Yes.
are again, and it's like 91% of all of these. They're just still open.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a couple of things here. One is Microsoft and the products that they put out and the amount of vulnerabilities within those products. On a regular basis, I think it's every Tuesday they have Patch Tuesday. They're putting out tens if not hundreds of disclosures around vulnerabilities that need to be patched and they certainly build up. And if you're not on top of your patch management, then yeah, these things will slip through the cracks. And as we can see, some of these patches have been around for 4 years and people haven't actioned them. So I think it's like there's two things. One is Microsoft need to take more responsibility for the software they're putting out. And we hear things like security by design. We hear things like particularly in the last US administration, trying to make these sorts of companies more responsible for the products that they put out and trying to regulate security by design and make them accountable. So, I mean, that's probably got a little way to go, but there's something there. And you also kind of think, surely as technology advances, and we talk about, LLMs and their use, and obviously Microsoft has a significant stake in OpenAI. They should be training this on their products to try and get on top of these vulnerabilities before they push them out.
Yeah, I mean, it's about for me, it's about how you work with your vendors. Do you trust your vendor? Are you actually taking their advice? So the end users have obviously, there's a myriad of problems on that side of the fence, but, for them not to have done anything is just really worrying. And we all know the effects that Salt Typhoon have been having upon the US government departments and listening into key conversations and accessing data that they really shouldn't have been looking at. Kind of a bit of a worry, really.
Yeah, and to go back to what we said last time around patch management, it's a fairly lengthy process. It involves the security team, it involves IT ops, it involves testing. There's a whole bunch of processes to go through. You've got change management, you've got release management. So these things are not straightforward. And as we know, the organizations are busy. They're pushing products out. They're fixing other defects. And so you actually need the time and the resources to actually focus on getting your patching up to date as much as you can, and trying to figure out, are there key vulnerabilities like this one that Salt Typhoon have been able to exploit? Do you need to move that up your priority list if it's still there?
Yeah, it's a discipline, right? And I mean, every organization has its own challenges, and we kind of get that. But I mean, this has to be well understood by the executives within organizations to understand whether they've actually got a disciplined organization or whether they're just flying by the seat of their pants as well. It's a challenge, right? Because I mean, the executives are going to carry the can if anything goes horribly wrong.
And that's where you've got to translate, I think, or communicate those sort of risks into terms that executives understand. And so, it's all very well saying, we've got, we're 100 patches behind and this is where we're up to and all these vulnerabilities on Salt Typhoon. But you actually need to be able to explain to the executives, well, this means that there's this amount of risk. And if it gets exposed, then, it could impact this many customers and you're liable for this, amount of penalties, and actually kind of translate that into something that executives can understand and actually apply some budget to get fixed.
Yeah, standards are it's the standards again. Sort of what are you aiming to be compliant with and how? Because we're trying to rush through this, I also wanted to talk about this FortiGate configuration links that have been going on, again from the register, and experts are suggesting that years-long compromises could remain in place. A new group called of so-called baddies, the Belson group, exposed which organizations may have been impacted in the 2022 zero-day exploits. There were about 15,000 FortiGate config files stolen during the 2022 zero-day exploits. And Fortinet have confirmed that this indeed was genuine. What are your sort of observations around this, my friend?
I think so. The summary of that news and the analysis was treat it like a security incident. So you should be going straight to whatever your security processes are. You should be looking and treating it as though there's potential compromise of your system, and do an assessment on that basis. And apply whatever fixes you need to do based on that compromise assessments. Yeah, this is quite serious. These firewalls have been completely exposed, so base your response as though a serious security incident has occurred.
Yeah. Okay. Well, and I really did want to speak about DeepSeek this week. You don't seem to be able to open your computer these days without something being sprung up in the news or on LinkedIn or any of those programs about what's happening with DeepSeek. I mean, this is a game changer, isn't it, in the world of AI and what have you?
Yeah, potentially. And obviously, I think more work is being done to try and figure out if the claims coming out of DeepSeek, particularly in terms of the costs to spin up this particular model, which apparently is comparable with anything that the US giants, the oligarchs, have put out. Comparing to OpenAI or Anthropic or whoever it might be. Now, I mean, if those claims are right, then and because DeepSeek is open source, potentially anyone with $6 million, if that's the right number, can spin up their own large language model and do with it what they wish. I think a lot of the focus has been on things like how much it's destroyed the value of certain large companies in the US. I think maybe one of the more interesting questions is once pretty much anyone in any country can spin up these powerful large language models, where are the controls? Because whilst the US, I mean, even China has an AI framework, and obviously the EU leads in terms of AI regulation. But what's to stop, let's say, people in Russia or North Korea spinning up something similar and using it for their own purposes? So where are the guardrails, I guess, is one of the questions. I think the other point is on the privacy side, where there's been a lot of concern about, well, if you're putting queries through DeepSeek's own servers, they're in China and they can pretty much do whatever they want in terms of the information you're putting through. And already we're seeing advice coming through that public sector organizations should not be using DeepSeek. At the same time, you're seeing advice coming through that you can actually run up a local version so that information doesn't go through to China and potentially the CCP. So there's a couple of things of interest in there.
Yeah, I mean, commercially, the stock market disruption's been quite extraordinary, and it's probably ruined quite a few people's weekends. With regards to the crashing of significant players over in the US for sure. But as you say, the privacy angle and trust, I suppose, digital trust, acceptance of these things is going to be down to pricing rather than whether it's actually diligently been ready for market. Okay, well, look, I think that we managed to scrape through. So we got all of those pieces covered. So that was Chat DPS for this week. Thank you from Robert and myself, Nick Lovell. And we very much look forward to catching up with everybody again in the not too distant future. Cheers, Robert.